Namaskar friends, welcome to session 28 in our course on work system design. As you are aware that currently we are discussing method study, and in method study we have learnt various graphical tools to represent the way we are conducting the work or the way we are performing the work. Now one important thing I would like to again emphasize today or revise today, that the work is being done in the shop floor and the analysis for the overall work can be done at various levels. This we have already seen, that if we analyze the work on a broader scale, that what is being done or what are the operations being done, what is the sequence of operations being done in the factory. So at the factory level, when we have to analyze the work, we will use different graphical tools. Maybe when we focus on one particular department, we have to analyze the work, we will use different graphical tools. And when we go to the machine level, when an operator is performing a work on a machine, we may use a different graphical tool, or we may use a different technique of analyzing the work, or for recording the work, or for comparing the different methods of doing the work. Today we have seen, or we are going to see on your screen, micro motion study. So today we are going to go to the most elemental level of work classification, that when a person is performing the task manually on any given machine or using a particular equipment, what are the basic, very basic, very fundamental, very micro level of motions that are done. For example, I have just now maybe put my hand here. So this is one motion, my hand moved from here, and then I had a itching feeling here, so I have just rubbed my hand on my face like this. So going to that micro level of understanding, micro level of examining. Why do we need to examine? Because our overall objective or our target is to find out the best methods of doing the work. What are the best methods? That we have already seen in the introduction to method study. So coming back again, or referring back to the various graphical tools that we have studied, we have seen operation process chart, a bird's eye view or a broader picture of the work being done in the organization. Then we have seen a flow process chart, it gives more detail as compared to the operation process chart. Then we have seen a multi-activity chart. In multi-activity chart, how a man is operating, for what period of the time man is working, when he is idle, or a single man is operating two machines, for what percentage of the time person is working, for what percentage of the time machine is working, all that in man machine chart we can see. Then we have also seen two-handed process charts, that when the left hand is doing a work, what is the right hand, on a time scale we can plot, and we have seen an example in which we have tried to assemble a nut and a bolt, and we have used the process chart symbols to draw this two-handed process chart. So you may question, or this may come to your mind, that what can be the difference between a two-handed process chart and the micro motion study, because there also we are analyzing the movement or the activities being done by both the hands simultaneously. So there has to be a difference between the two, that is the two-handed process chart is different from the micro motion study in a way that micro motion study is even further detailed study of the work being done. So two-handed process chart, if you remember, we use the process chart symbols there. What are these symbols? We have a circle for operation, then we have a symbol for hold, a symbol for transportation, a symbol for inspection, which is mostly avoided. So in case of two-handed process chart, if I remember correctly, we have already discussed that. So these symbols basically are used for making a two-handed process chart, but in micro motion study we use a completely different set of symbols. So maybe one activity, this is important, that one activity that we depict in a two-handed process chart may further boil down or may further ramify into two or three different symbols or two or three different micro motions. So once again I reiterate that one activity of a two-handed process chart can be further divided into 2 or 3 basic motions. And what are those motions? Those are called the micro motions, and the study of the micro motions is called the micro motion study. What is the objective of doing the micro motion study? We try to optimize, economize the motions of the worker, the movements of his limbs or her limbs. We try to economize on that, so that the work being performed is performed to the satisfactory level or as per the desired specifications, but causing minimum fatigue to the worker. The worker feels fresh after doing his or her work. So that is basic purpose of analyzing the motions or the elements of human motions at the micro level, so that we are able to improve or provide the workers with a economized sequence of motions, so that the work is enjoyable for the workers. So in 6th week of our discussion, just to revise, we have seen the basic concept of string diagrams, which help us to design the layout in the most optimized manner. In the previous session, we have seen the principles of motion economy, in which we have seen that 3 different types of principles do exist, which we must follow in designing the work as well as in designing the workplace. Today our target is micro motion study. So as I have already told that we have a discussion for several weeks on method study before we shift our attention to the work measurement, and finally on ergonomics. So in today's session we will try to understand the basic concept of micro motion study. Now let us see the introduction to micro motion study. If the discussion or what I have already tried to explain in the most simplistic manner, if it is clear, the sentences easily will be comprehensible as well as understandable. So micro motion study is the technique of recording and analyzing the timing of basic motions. Now what are these basic motions or basic elements that we will see in the subsequent slides. So this is the technique of recording and analyzing the timing of basic elements of an operation, with the objective of, why do we need to examine, why do we need to analyze these basic elements? What is the objective? The objective is to achieve the best method, and this is our target. We are trying to do the method study. This whatever we are discussing today, that is micro motion study, is one of the important techniques for method study, and in method study we are trying to find out one best method of doing the work, of performing the operation. So maybe we are doing or we are performing the work as has been taught to us by our supervisor, or as has been taught to us by the manager, or whatever we have studied in the book, but there is always a scope of improvement. So if we analyze the work properly, and whatever we have studied theoretically in the books, many things may have changed. Number of equipments may have been devised or may be used in the industry, which we may not have studied when we were studying for our degrees or for our diplomas. So things have changed. So when things have changed, the method of working must also change, and when the method of working has to be changed, we need to analyze, we need to find out, we need to examine that whether the method which we are employing for doing the work is the best or the most optimal, or there can be a better method. And as suggested by the researchers, there can be better methods of doing the job, and therefore we examine the work at various levels. We analyze the work at various levels, and today our target is at the micro level, how to analyze the work, why to analyze the work, and how it will help us to improve or to find out the best method for performing the operations. So such respective short duration activities involve quick movement of limbs, which cannot be accurately studied and timed using the two-handed process chart. So this I have already explained in the introductory part today, that in two-handed process chart we use the basic process chart symbols, and maybe one activity during the two-handed process chart may be further subdivided into basic micro motions, and therefore we need to understand that what can be the various basic micro motions which can be analyzed, and that we will see today, as well as maybe in the next session our target will be thermalics, which are a very fundamental basic micro motions. So what we cannot achieve using two-handed process chart, that we can achieve using the micro motion study. So short cycle operations require to be studied for micro motions. So short cycle, so it is not maybe we are not going to focus on very long cycle. Very long cycle means that suppose a person is doing a task which does not require very frequent movement of the hands. For example, he is just switching on and off the conveyor belt. So maybe it is just one motion only throughout the day. So maybe it is not repetitive also. After half an hour he has to just once press the button and he has to just analyze how the conveyor belt is moving the material. So maybe if there is some defective part, he has to just pick it up, and one defective is coming maybe after 2 hours of operation. So that is not a very repetitive or a frequent movement of the limbs. Whereas there is another operation where a person has to assemble 3 or 4 parts together and then drop the assembly in a box, and then again take 3-4 parts and drop the assembly in the final assembly in the box. So this is quick movement of the limbs and then assembly and then dropping. So in those cases maybe we need to analyze the short cycle. So short cycle operations to be studied for microscopic motion. So there we can see that what is the movement of the limbs, how the hands are moving, how the feet are moving, what is the basic motions that are being done by the hands. In those cases it is much more relevant, because there if we are able to economize, we are able to optimize the motions in such a way that the effort is reduced, the worker will be more productive or the labor productivity will improve. So the short cycle operations require to be studied for micro motion study. For example is given, operation of picking up a nut from a bin and its fixing consists of 3 hand motions, namely reach for the nut. So suppose this is the nut which is lying here. So first operation will be reach for the nut, reach. Or sometimes as per the ILO specification in the book it is given we transport empty. So I am reaching to the nut. Second is grasp, I have to grasp it, take hold of this nut and move the hand back to assemble. So it is movement, bringing it to the assembly, and the left hand will also be doing something. It may reach to the bolt, then grasp the bolt, move the bolt to the place of assembly, and then finally the assembly will take place. But this is short cycle and repetitive. A person may be doing hundreds of such micro motions in a day. So in that case if we are able to economize, it will save lot of time and effort for the worker. Grasp the nut and move the nut hand back to the assembly position. So this may be for one hand motion, and then for the other hand also these similar motions may be there. So the example I am reading it for you for micro motion study. What type of short cycle operations we can study using micro motion study? Operation of picking up a nut from the bin and fixing consists of 3 hand motions, namely reach for the nut, grasp the nut and move hand back to the assembly position. Such detailed analysis help to, now why do we need to do such type of analysis? They help to develop the best possible pattern of movements and hence enabling the operator to perform various operations repeatedly with minimum effort and fatigue. So minimum effort and fatigue are the two good things that we want to achieve. So the operator will be happy if the fatigue being caused because of the work is less, and he is able to achieve much more work as was done by the current method. So using the analysis, using the basic motions, if we are able to develop a better method, a better sequence of operations, or we try to help him by designing and developing a assistive device which can assist him for performing his work, he will be a happy worker for the organization. Now This is another advantage. Considerable wastage of motions and idle time can occur within an operation, and micro motion study will help us in the improvement by reducing the operation cycle time. So, if we are able to first record the current method of doing the job, try to see what are the various micro motions being done or what are the various sequence of micro motions, can we do it in a better manner, can we brainstorm, can we find out using creativity or innovative design some proper, or not some, maybe we can say a better method of doing the same work. In that case, it will reduce the overall operation cycle time. So, this is just a very standard diagram. In most of the work science labs, you will see this diagram which shows the right hand maximum working area, normal working area, left hand maximum working area. So, this is very standard and depends upon the anthropometric data for the various areas of or the various regions of the world. Maybe this may slightly vary if we talk about European industry, if we talk about Asian industry, little bit of variation may be there. This is as per my personal perception, because the maximum working area, minimum working area is found out by taking maybe shoulder and elbow as the rivet. For maximum, you can see the shoulder may be taken as a rivet, and for maybe a joint, and for a minimum working area the elbow may be taken as a pivot point. So, this may vary because the anthropometric data will vary across the world. So, that is maybe one important information that can be used when we are doing the micro motion study in the direct way or the indirect way. Now, we are seeing one important term here, which is Therbligs on your screen. So, micro motion study. Now, what is the study? What we have seen that we need to do the micro motion study, it will reduce the operation cycle time, it will economize the effort of the worker, the fatigue to the worker will be less if we are able to develop a better method of doing the work. There is a current method, we can analyze it. Going to the micro motion level, the basic elemental motions can be studied, observed, recorded, analyzed, and a better method can be proposed which can be useful for the worker. So, all that is the basic understanding about the micro motion study. But what is micro motion study? Micro motion study is a set of techniques intended to divide the human activities in a groups of movements or micro motions called the Therbligs. So, this micro motions as a family, as a group, are usually called as the Therbligs. And what are Therbligs? We will have a special session on Therbligs. Maybe the next session will be on Therbligs only. But prior to going to the Therbligs, we need to understand that why do we need to conduct this micro motion study. So, this will help us in improving the way we are doing our work. It will reduce the operation cycle time, it will reduce the effort of the worker. So, this Therblig we will definitely study in the next session. And the study of such movements, these micro motions or Therbligs, helps to find for an operator one best pattern. Again and again we are reiterating, this is our target which we want to hit. One best pattern of movement that consumes less time, one advantage, requires less effort to accomplish the task. So, it is time saving and it requires less effort for performing the task. So, we will try to understand what are these Therbligs. There are specific Therbligs for specific micro motions in the next session, and what is the need to do this. Already I think 3 times in today's session I have highlighted that what is the importance of micro motion study. Therbligs were suggested by Frank B. Gilbreth, the founder of motion study. This name already we have seen, one of the founders of the motion study principles. Again, whatever we have covered till now in this session, this is a summary of all that. That is purpose of micro motion study. Whatever introduction, definition we have seen, this is a summary. I will not go into the detail of each and every sentence, but read these sentences for you. First is to study the nature and path of movements for obtaining the elements of an operation. This is related to recording or maybe observing the current method of doing the work. Then it can be used to impart training to the workers or operators regarding the motion economy, so that the unnecessary movements by the workers may be avoided. So unnecessary movements we want to avoid, and it will help us. The study of micro motion will help us to avoid this unnecessary movement. To keep permanent record of the most efficient way of performing a task for future reference. So if we have found out a best or the optimal sequence or optimal pattern of these basic movements or micro motions, we can record it for future reference, and that can become a standard method of doing the work. To obtain the motion time data for developing synthetic time standards, very important, synthetic time standards. So this is very relevant in case of work measurement, and we will study this in detail when we focus our attention on work measurement. So these micro motions can be related to time taken for each micro motion, and these can be useful when we want to find out the standard time for performing a task using the standard method of doing it. So this will be helpful using the synthetic data, and it is one of the standard techniques, one of the important techniques of work measurement that we will study during our work measurement discussion. So micro motion will also help us for carrying out research in the field of method and time study. So maybe we can find out we can trace or observe or locate some areas where improvement can be done with the help of micro motion study, and then further we can do research in that area and try to economize the efforts of the worker. So we can see that micro motion study is a important technique which will help us to economize the efforts of the worker and to find out best sequence or best pattern of micro motions or movements which can help us to improve our efficiency and reduce the operation cycle time. Now what are the steps involved? Now we have understood that it is important, it must be done. What are the advantages? I think numerous times it has been listed in the previous slide. Some of you may even be feeling bored that the same thing has been repeated 3-4 times, but it is important that when we study micro motion, we must know that why we are studying, what is the importance, but how to do it is a standard approach. I will not repeat it once, I will not repeat it again and again. Once only we will see that what are the steps involved. First one is filming the operation to be studied, then the analysis of the data. From where? From the film which is already recorded, and the last is making the recording of the data using the SIMO chart. This is SIMO chart, we will cover maybe in the last session of this week. Now first is filming the operation to be studied. All of us are very good at using the mobile phone cameras these days and making motion pictures. Videos can be recorded using the mobile phones. So it is nothing new which can be taught to you. All of you know how to make the movies. So first is filming the operation to be studied. So on a shop floor, when we want to do the micro motion study of a person operating a specific machine or performing a specialized task or performing a task, we can film the complete work cycle or film the complete cycle. So how we can do that? Micro motion study consists of taking motion pictures of the activity while being performed by an operator. Now operator is performing some task, we will film it. Traditionally, now this is important, traditionally what was used in the books, whatever is mentioned, the equipment required to make a film or videotape of an operation consists of a 16mm movie camera, 16mm film, wink counter. What is wink? It is explained in the last point here. Wink counter or a micro chronometer and other usual photographic aids. So here I would like to add that this is from the theoretical book point of view. But these days there are latest techniques, high-end cameras, very high resolution cameras are available, very high shutter speed cameras are available. I think the younger generation, the learners may be more acquainted with the latest type of cameras, latest types of video cameras that are available. To my knowledge, I may not be an expert in that area, but yes, by frame we can analyze how the worker is performing the task, frame by frame. If you see, those of you who watch sports on television, the cricket, how clearly my slow motion is shown, even the bat coming and hitting the ball at the center of the bat, all that can even be captured. Even when in swimming, there is sometimes photo finish. So at a very slow pace, you can analyze who has finished the race first. So that kind of cameras are available. So when we have those type of cameras available, it becomes far more easier for us to understand that how the worker is performing the tasks. So this is a traditional method, maybe 15-20 years back. Maybe these days we have all the latest equipment and cameras which can help us to record the sequence of micro motions being done by a worker while he or she is performing the task. Now, like micro chronometer or wink counter is a timing device placed in the field of view while filming, and the time is recorded in winks. Now the wink, one wink is equal to 1/2000 times a minute. So because it is micro motion, it is kind of a ballistic movement, it is done in a very short interval of time, therefore the units for time cannot be minutes or hours, or to that matter second, it has to be milliseconds or microseconds. So accordingly we see that we are using another term that is called winks, and one wink is equal to 1/2000 of a minute. So first is filming. What are the advantages of film over direct observation? Permit greater detailing than eye observation. As I have already told, our eye has got a capability. Beyond that we may not be able to analyze if the motions are very fast, but with films we can stop the film again and again, reverse the film and again analyze. So that advantage is there. Provide greater accuracy than pencil, paper and watch techniques, and it is more convenient, and we can store it for later use also. Analysis of the data from the film. Once you have recorded the film, we have to analyze the data. Once the operation has been filmed and film is processed, then the film is viewed with the help of projector for analysis of micro motion. The film is analyzed in the following way. So these days the projectors are available, we can have a bigger screen and analyze the way the work is being done. Film is run at normal speed so as to get familiar with the pattern of movement involved. A typical work cycle is selected from amongst the filmed cycles. So you may film for 1 hour, a person may have done 100 cycles in those 1 hour, or may have done 10 cycles in that 1 hour. So we will identify which 2-3 important cycles we want to further analyze. So since we are going to have short cycle times here, so it is a continuous process, worker is continuously working and the cycle time is shorter. So we have to identify that which frames we want to analyze. So film is run at a very low speed and is usually stopped or reversed frequently to identify the motions. Now what are these motions? These motions are the Therbligs that we will cover in the next session. Therbligs after identification are entered in the analysis sheet. So first thing is make a good movie using the most latest instrumentation or the cameras available or the video cameras available. Then you analyze it frame by frame, and then try to analyze that what are the basic motions being done by the person when he is performing the task. Then recording of the data. Recording of the data is done using the SIMO chart. What is a SIMO chart? It is simultaneous motion cycle chart. It is a recording technique for micro motion study. We will cover SIMO chart in the last session of this week, that is week number 6. A SIMO chart is a chart based on the film analysis used to record simultaneously on a common time scale. So the micro motions will be recorded on a common time scale, and the micro motions are called thermalics, or a group of thermalics performed by different parts of the body of one or more operators. So basically the two things are important here. One is the time in terms of winks, and the another is the thermalics or the micro motions that the worker or a group of workers are doing for performing the task or while performing the task. Now, what are the advantages of micro motion study? So, you can see it provides a permanent record of motion study of film. So, now maybe 5 years down the line, if we again want to see that what was the method that was followed 5 years ago for performing this task, we can just take out the film and see how it was being done. So, it provides a permanent record of the motion study. A large number of operators can see the procedure at any time, even after completion of the motion study work. That is also important. It becomes a teaching aid also. You have a film, you have recorded it at particular time when a person is not doing the work in the correct manner. We can depict at that particular time, teach, or maybe we can train our people in such a way that this is the place where normally the people go wrong. So here you must avoid, you must follow the specified pattern of movements in order to be right. So our micro motion films can be later used as training aids also. It can be shown to a large number of people. Films can easily reveal the difference between the present and the proposed technique. So we can identify in the present that this is the place where the problem is there, and then we can show what is the right method of doing the work, or what is the right pattern or sequence of motions that must be adopted by the workers. Films can be demonstrated to a large workforce at the desired speed. So if we have the film, we can show it at frame by frame by frame and train our workers accordingly. It provides accurate time for each operation or motion in comparison to the stopwatch time study. So this point I am not emphasizing right now, because first we need to understand what do we mean by stopwatch time study, and then compare it with the filming technique or the time provided by the film. So when we go to work measurement, there we will try to understand that what is a stopwatch time study technique and how it is different from the filming technique, that what can be the differences. So with this we conclude the today's session on micro motion study. I think to summarize, we have understood that why do we need to do the micro motion study and what are the steps to be followed in performing a micro motion study. And two things have come out from today's session, that is the thermalics, which are the basic micro motion, and the CMO chart on which we record the thermalics using the time scale. So both these things, the thermalics and the CMO chart, we will be covering in our subsequent sessions. Thank you.